Hello and welcome to She Did That, the podcast that celebrates women shaping the promotional products industry, one bold idea, one fearless leap, and one inspiring story at a time.
I'm Emily Codner here with my fabulous co-host Amelia Model. Every episode we will be chatting with trailblazers, innovators, and everyday boss babes who are making big waves in the promotional space. One product, one pitch, one bold move at a time.
And today's guest is Amy Williams, CEO of AB Unlimited Worldwide. She's got a story worth hearing, a journey worth celebrating, and you guessed it, she did that. Hi, Amy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us today. You and I met about 3 years ago when you attended a Woman's View, and it's been a pleasure to follow you in your journey. But while I know that you are clearly fabulous, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us how you got into the promotional products industry?
Hello, my name is Amy Williams, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of AB Unlimited Worldwide, a marketing resource agency. The origin of our company was actually my husband's vision. He was a very successful pre-press sales rep and had been in the print industry for 20 years. He came to me in 2007 and said, Amy, print is dying. And if we want to maintain our lifestyle, we're going to need to make some changes. And he saw the opportunity to build a resource-based agency model, something more consultative than transactional. And I was really hesitant at first. I wasn't sure if this was the path we should be going down, and I was a little nervous about it. I was very unsupportive at first, but a few months later, I was standing in Times Square next to a bus shelter, and I could not believe my eyes. I called Brian on my pink Razor flip phone, if you remember those, and I said, Brian, I'm standing in Times Square next to a bus shelter, and you're not going to believe what I'm seeing. And he said, what are you looking at? And I said, I'm not looking at a studio poster for a movie, which is what Brian's bread and butter was. I'm looking at a digital TV screen. And he was quiet for a moment. And he said, now do you get it? And we opened up AB Unlimited a year later. After my mother passed in 2010, I took a sabbatical from law. I was practicing law at the time in California. And one day I walked into Brian's office and saw a large-scale promotional project being outsourced. And I immediately said, Brian, we need to bring this in-house. He looked me dead in the eye and said, handle it. And a month later, we were members of PPAI, SAGE, ASI, all of it. And that decision became the start of our promotional products division. And when we first started it, it was 30% of our revenue. And today it's 90% of our revenue.
Whew.
That's a great story.
That is a great story. Holy Hannah.
And kudos to you for being able to work with your husband. I just got round of applause right there.
It works beautifully because I have corporate structure. I mean, corporate and business law was my background. Contract law, that was all my background prior to coming in. So, and his background not only was in print, but he also worked for an accounting firm. So he had the finance knowledge and all of that operational skills. So we stay in each other's lanes. We don't cross over. We consult where we need to, and we defer to the other where we need to because of their expertise. And it's been 15 years.
Wow. That's incredible.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Talk about a leap of faith.
Yeah, no joke. Okay. Well, that's amazing. So, as you alluded to, before you got started in your career in promo, you were a champion athlete, which I did not know that part. I can't wait to hear. And a lawyer. What inspired you to make the jump into marketing and promotion? Most of the time, parents are like, be a lawyer, be a doctor, not go into promotional products. So how did you end up here, or why?
I'm an accidental marketer. I had to learn quickly. I sought out mentors who were generous with both their knowledge and their truth. I have to give a shout out to Dave Maurer, my first account rep at ASI. He was one of our early champions. John Glucksman from Quake City Caps was a mentor, and Teddy Scott from AZX taught me valuable lessons. Memo Khan from Promo Shop. They each taught me different aspects of the business and product knowledge and relationships, scales, discipline. We all go through the same challenges, no matter how small your promotional products distributorship is, from those that are selling $100,000 a year to those that are selling $100 million a year. As Memo Khan taught me, it's just about how many numbers and zeros you have at the end of your number.
Wow.
So, very quickly, I learned the difference between actually selling promo and actually running a 7-figure business, because that distinction changes everything.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. When you were young, you were diagnosed with a neurological disorder that could have changed your life trajectory, but you decided not to let it define you. So why don't you tell us about that?
When I was young, I was diagnosed as neurodivergent with Tourette syndrome and a host of comorbid disorders that go along with that, being on the spectrum. And back then, the narrative wasn't exactly optimistic. The doctor actually told me and my parents that I would likely never go to college. I would never have a professional career. I would never get married or live independently. All of these obstacles were immediately transcribed to me. And that's a heavy thing to hear as a 9-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, I remember feeling how I felt when I was in that doctor's office, but what I remember more and what I internalized was when we got home, my dad had got me ice cream and he sat me down on the couch and he said very matter-of-factly, "There isn't anything that you can't do. It just might take you a little longer." And that sentence did more for me than any therapy or doctor medication could do. And suddenly it wasn't about limitations, it was about pacing. And I really took that personally. I absolutely wanted to prove that doctor wrong. Let's not sugarcoat it. I became an extreme overachiever since the age of 9. I had a running list in my head: graduate college. I was a baton twirler, so I wanted to compete and I wanted to become a national champion. I wanted to be a world champion. I wanted to twirl for my college. I wanted to go to college. And then law school. I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to build something substantial. I wanted to build a life that was drastically different from the one that was prescribed to me when I was 9. And I wanted to be successful. So I started collecting proof. I started keeping a scoreboard of my life. And I was very driven. I was very relentless. And by 33, I had checked off every box on that list that I created for myself. And I remember thinking, okay, now what? And when you've spent your entire life trying to disprove a prediction or prove people wrong, you don't realize how much of your drive is tied to that prediction. And here's the uncomfortable part. Even when you're trying to prove people wrong, there's still the reference point. And that realization hit me really hard. That was the pivot. I stopped finally trying to outrun someone else's expectations. I started building from my own. I started enjoying things on my own. I started doing things because they brought me joy. And I talk a little bit about this in the TEDx talk that I did in 2025, not as a comeback story, but as an identity shift. There's a season where proving people wrong can fuel you for a season. But if you're not careful, it can own you. And here's something else I've learned. There's another layer people don't always see. Living with Tourette syndrome, especially when it's visible or when it's audible, means navigating public spaces differently. And I remember one time, shortly after my husband and I got married, we had been given opera tickets from a neighbor of ours. And we were sitting, it was a dress rehearsal. It wasn't even the command performance. Oh. And we got to go see the whole entire dress rehearsal. And I remember sitting in the balcony quietly managing my tics. And a woman sitting next to us turned to me and said, "You shouldn't be allowed out in public." And that moment stayed with me, not because it hurt, and it did, but it revealed something. There's this dichotomy. When your difference is invisible, you're judged on your performance. When it's visible, suddenly you're judged on your presence, on your existence. And your capability hasn't changed. My capability hasn't changed. My character hasn't changed. But the tolerance level around me has. And watching that dynamic play out as I think about my life up to this point, it really made me hyper aware of perception, of power, of opportunity. And that awareness now shapes how I move about in the world. It's part of why I care about preparation, legitimacy, governance, and being in environments and rooms where people aren't arbitrarily excluding others because they make them feel uncomfortable.
I love that. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing. And you probably have way more class than I, but had that doctor told me that, and then I had become you, I would have made sure to put him on my Christmas card list, and every year been like, say that again. Proved you wrong, buddy. I'd have been a little bit catty and made sure he knew that he was incorrect in his future telling. but with that said, how does your experience drive your success? You just mentioned a little bit, but is there any one point beyond that?
I think my experiences drives everything, but probably not in the way that people expect. I don't wake up thinking, oh, I overcame something. That's not how it shows up. What it did was make me hyper aware of ceilings, especially the subtle ones that as women and as a woman of color, we don't always talk about. When you grow up with someone else defining your limits, you get very good at spotting when systems or people underestimate you, or when infrastructure is weak, or when expectations are quietly shrinking. So in business, I don't wing it. I build structures, have to. Systems, processes, and that's the way my brain thinks. That's the way most neurodivergent brains think, is we have to have structure because inside our head is mass chaos. So in leadership, I don't want to assume that people are ready. I want to prepare them. And one of the benefits of that, and one of the benefits that I like to give back, because so many people were there for us when we started our promo career to help us and guide us. So it was my turn to give back. So I started the Promo Lawyer during pandemic, providing these guidance for promotional products distributors, the smaller ones that don't have access or think they can't afford adequate legal services. And now I see how many people are taking unnecessary risks simply because no one taught them the rules. And in my extracurricular life, I serve as a board member for an international sports federation. And that governance, I care deeply about legitimacy and recognition because I understand what it feels like to have your capability questioned. But it's not about proving anybody wrong anymore. It's about building those environments where capable people, no matter what their background is, don't have to fight those same ceilings.
Wow. Yeah, that's fantastic. And
I know, I feel like we need to sit for a second. I'm just like, I know we're supposed to talk, but I'm like, just still processing.
yeah, for real. I mean, and you kind of touched upon this, and I love your mantra of building structure to prepare yourself. I think a lot more of us need to take that moment to pause and think before we act. And that's incredible that you have that mantra and that you have that structure. So, I mean, man, you are more impressive than I could have even imagined. So
Thank
you for sharing your story. So you kind of touched on it, but what's one piece of advice that you would offer to other ladies facing similar circumstances?
I would say this. Don't build your identity around proving somebody wrong. I did that for 30 years. It can fuel you for a while, but it certainly fueled me during my 20s and my 30s and part of my 40s, but eventually it becomes exhausting. And if you're not careful, you realize you've built your ambition around somebody else's expectations. And that's not freedom. That's survival. Instead, I would say invest in your infrastructure, whether that's your personal life, your family life, your business life, your social life. Learn how decisions are actually made, not how you hope they're made, how they're actually made. And learn contracts, learn financials, learn governance, learn how risk moves, learn what leverage looks like, learn who actually has authority in the rooms that you want to be in, because confidence is the only important ingredient that binds success. It really is. It's confidence. It's not wealth. It's not capital. It's not even experience. I had no idea what I was doing with promotional products, right? I knew nothing but confidence. Confidence is everything. And preparation changes how you're going to carry yourself. It changes how you negotiate. It changes how you recover when something goes sideways. I tell women especially, access isn't the same thing as influence. Being invited into a room doesn't mean you're positioned to shape what happens in it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't wait to feel ready. Feeling ready is emotional. Being equipped is structural. Do the work before you need the work. And to me, that's what shifts all outcomes.
That's great. Great advice. Great advice. I could sit here and talk all day. Or actually, I could just listen all day. I'm just like, you don't even need me. Just shut my screen off and we'll just keep talking to you. But I love everything. And you had to have been raised by amazing parents, I'm guessing, because you've taken these challenges and you've made yourself a superhero. Like things that most people would, let them bring you down. You just said how you use those weaknesses and make yourself stronger. So I love that.
Well, if you knew my backstory, not very many people know this, but my mother went blind when I was 4 years old. And she was an incredibly strong-willed woman. And she would have made an amazing entrepreneur, but she was content to be a wife and mother and raise 2 kids. And at age 4, she started teaching me to read from the LA Times. And I became her eyes. My sister is 8 years older than me, so I was still at home. My sister was already, out at college and out of the house. And my mom literally taught me to read to her from the Los Angeles Times. So by the time I was in kindergarten and first grade, third, fourth, I was already reading almost at high school level.
Yeah. Wow.
And she had such an amazing fortitude. She didn't let anything stop her. She didn't even know she was blind. It just didn't enter into her world. She was going to do what she was going to travel. She was going to enjoy life. She was going to go out and eat at restaurants. She was going to nurture me into becoming an international champion. She was going to see me go to college. She was going to be there right behind me. And she had no eyesight. So
Wow.
I think I learned that from her because giving up just wasn't an option. It wasn't
So
for her.
superheroes run in your family is basically what I'm hearing. Like,
let me tell you about my granny. We'll have to have another episode on my grandmother who was
Oh my
born in
goodness,
the 1800s
strong.
and literally a pioneer.
that's crazy. Yeah, I just need to come rub shoulders with you and have some of your
Yeah.
DNA rub off on me, and maybe I can put that back out. So you've accomplished so much already, but what is your next bold move? Do you have anything planned?
So I'm working on a guidebook for women who are already in the boardroom or about to be and want to stay there. So not just to get the seat, but to stay, to lead, and actually shape what happens in that room. Because as we all know, boardrooms aren't neutral. They're power structures. There are alliances. There are moments where someone talks over you or reframes what you said in a negative light or questions your credibility or tests whether you really belong there. That's not drama. That's just how rooms work. And the guidebook's not about motivation. It's about tools and how to prepare you before you walk in, how to read the room quickly, how to hold your ground without raising your voice, or if you have to raise your voice, in a way that is effective. What to do when someone tries to undercut you, tries to bring you down, tries to humiliate you, and how to respond without losing your composure, how to respond strategically. I've spent so many years, the last 20 years in business and law and international sport governance. I've learned patterns. I've made adjustments myself. I figured out what actually works, figured out what doesn't work. And at some point I realized I have a playbook in my head. So the bold move, I'm going to share it.
Love that. Love that. And please let us know when this is published so we can get our hands on it.
Yes, I
Because
need an advance copy, please.
yeah, I'm sitting here listening to you and there's so much I want to learn from you. So I cannot wait. Let us know when that book is out so we can pick your brains a little bit. But
you.
wow. On that note, thank you for being here, Amy, and for sharing all that wisdom with us. You are an incredible powerhouse of a woman. So
Thank
I hope
you.
everyone learned something from you today. I know we certainly did.
Absolutely.
And thanks to everybody for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time. But for now, take it in, be inspired, then go do that. We'll see you next time.